Now, our speaker of the day, Allyson, Malik.
If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. George Orwell, 1984. And with that sentiment, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Allyson Malik. I am the director of the Oak Bluffs Public Library, which many of you know because I work with you. Or I work with you as one of the committees that you're on, or I used to work with you. And I'm here to talk today about how libraries and librarians have directly aligned missions to the Unitarian Universalist fourth principle for the responsible truth for truth and meaning. And specifically, I want to thank Peter Palchis for inviting me to speak today. Though he didn't mention it, Peter and I did work together when he was the chair of the Library Board of Trustees at the Oak Bluffs Library when I came aboard 10 years ago and somehow decided to hire me, so thank you. And when he asked if I would speak to you all today about what libraries are currently up against in this widening culture of anti-intellectualism and fear-based removal of other values and other ideas, I was honored. And it is with honor that I stand before you today to discuss a topic that is not only near and dear to my heart, but is central to the core values of libraries as the guardians of free speech, intellectual freedom, the right to read, and yes, even offensive ideas. Our libraries are the custodians of ideas, both good and, frankly, not so great. And we witness challenges in different communities growing every day. And as we continue to face those challenges and learn more about this new culture we find ourselves in, we have to remain steadfast in the defense of intellectual freedom. As the director of the Oak Bluffs Public Library, I am privileged to lead an institution that stands as a bastion of these principles. All libraries are reflections of and offer transformational tools to their communities. And in Oak Bluffs, we celebrate not only the wide range of interests that are held by our patrons, but we are also honing in on the very specific aspects that make our town unique. So we are the center of the African American culture here on Martha's Vineyard. We are home to the island's Pride Parade. We are also the place where transformational meetings on climate change can take place. So our library ensures that each of these groups has more than just a simple place on our shelves, but a place where connections can be made and ideas exchanged. And that is the core value of what we do. Our library's mission fosters connectedness by providing collections, programs, and technology to promote literacy and an informed citizenry through open and equal access to cultural, intellectual, recreational, and community services. It is deeply rooted in the belief that everyone deserves access to information in all of the different ways that we have the bandwidth to provide. We're not merely the curators of books, but we are also the stewards of the intellectual freedom to be able to have access to those books. We defend the right to explore diverse ideas, no matter what they are, or how those ideas are accessed. And yes, I promised myself I would not talk about Wi-Fi here. Peter. But if I was, this is the place in the speech where I would do that. But let's move on, and let's move on to the concept of intellectual freedom itself. And in doing so, I considered the words of Salman Rushdie, who once said, "What is freedom of expression? Without the freedom to offend, it ceases to exist." In our commitment to protect intellectual freedom of Rushdie's and others, maybe not so popular ideas, we build a structure from the legal framework that protects that mission. The American Library Association, in its Library Bill of Rights, asserts that libraries should provide materials and information presenting all points of view. However, that mission faces challenges in the form of recent developments related to censorship and book bans, and we in Massachusetts are absolutely no exception. In fact, according to the American Library Association and verified by the Massachusetts Library Association, Massachusetts saw so many attempts to ban books in 2022 that we were 4th in the whole nation. We are an attractive target. Along with about a dozen or so other directors of libraries across the Commonwealth, I sit on the executive board of the Massachusetts Library System. Every month, we talk about and make solutions for problems that are facing Massachusetts libraries. Every month, I hear firsthand the effect that censorship attempts and book banning requests are going into libraries across the state. James Lonergan, who is the director of the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, talked to us about how he himself has taken phone calls from library directors who are in tears because they are so affected by the ad hominem attacks that they are getting by people calling in and blaming them for doing their job, to put materials in front of their community that someone does not agree with. In addition to what I've learned firsthand, I was also doing some research for this talk and found out that through the American Library Association's Office on Intellectual Freedom, nationwide they reported 695 separate attempts to censor library material across the country, and that amounts to challenges of 1,915 separate titles. That is a 20% increase over the 2022 number. And the 2022 number was the highest number of book ban requests that the American Library Association had ever noted in 20 years of collecting data. The vast majority of these challenges were books written by or about a person of color or a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Make no mistake, the people who are putting these challenges in front of library boards may say that they find one of the ideas inside this book offensive. What they are really trying to do is completely silence these voices, and that is so evident just by the statistics. Now, in facing these challenges, we draw strength from our colleagues and the strong support system that we have here in Massachusetts, but we also derive our instructions specifically from our collection development policy. You actually heard some of it mentioned earlier in today's talk, but I'll read you a small part that we have specifically on the section with regard to intellectual freedom. This is on our policy page that you'll find on our website. Inherent in the collection development philosophy is an appreciation for each patron of the Oak Bluffs Public Library. The library provides materials to support each other's journey, each individual's journey, and does not place a value on one patron's needs or preferences over another's. The library upholds the right of an individual to access information, even though the content may be controversial, unorthodox, or unacceptable to others. A democracy presupposes an informed citizenry, and the public library is an integral role in achieving that goal. Now, a question that we get asked a lot is, when applying this policy, what do we do when it comes to making choices about that unorthodox material? We are not so blind that we accept and allow every single idea to come into the library. It's crucial to distinguish between censorship and the responsible selection of materials. So we are not devoid of discernment. In fact, it's our job. A library is a curated space that prioritizes community needs, and on top of our community needs, they are prioritized by making sure that the materials we choose value the principles of accuracy, integrity, and the respect for human dignity. For example, Holocaust-denying material has no place on our shelves because we have a responsibility for accuracy, integrity, and respect for human dignity. On those principles, we absolutely take sides. To quote Eli Wiesel, Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And aligning our collections with accuracy, integrity, and the respect for human dignity, we take a stand against misinformation while also upholding the ideals of intellectual freedom. That having been said, not everyone will agree with our choices. So it is also imperative that we have an open dialogue and we foster an environment where concerns can be addressed and our library policies made transparent. So I'm pointing to Peter because he wrote some of these policies. To that end, the library board, the Board of Library Trustees for the Oak Bluffs Library recently changed our collection development policy. They actually did this last Thursday. Now, most library policies outline a way in which someone can challenge the material that's within the library, and ours obviously is no different. In our policy, we had originally stated that a patron who wishes to challenge materials within our library can follow the due process instructions to do so. In light of the growing number of book ban requests across the country and the Commonwealth, the Library Board of Trustees changed the eligibility requirement. It no longer says a patron. It now says a Town of Oak Bluffs resident or property owner or holder with an active CLAMS account. So we are no longer at risk for someone outside creating an online account, thus becoming a patron, and then immediately sending us a list of 12, 24, 100 items they want us to remove from our shelves. And the way that we talked about it, we said, these items were bought by the people of Oak Bluffs. They belong to the people of Oak Bluffs, and only the people of Oak Bluffs should have a say as to whether their library remains intact or not. The commitment to this intellectual freedom extends beyond the confines of our library, well beyond the walls, in fact. We sometimes enter other spaces as well. Hello. Successful community engagement, like what we're doing right now, is at the heart of our mission as well. Through book clubs or forums or interactive events and even UU services, we provide platforms for these kinds of ideas to be heard and celebrated and understood. So this is a difficult topic, but I know that you folks are used to hearing difficult topics. We are sanctuaries of learning, fostering education, and critical thinking. And on the critical thinking aspect, we do have to toe a very careful line about separating the art from the artist. If a library were to remove every work of literature from our shelves because the author was found at some point to have had outdated or bigoted or hateful thoughts towards certain people, I'm afraid that our library would not have all that much left. Maybe the children's room. Maybe not. Maybe not. Or actually, maybe not. So instead of removing access to the art, or in this case, literature, because we are disgusted by the artist, or in this case, author, we instead provide the tools to read their work with a critical eye. One of the tools that we teach high school students, as an example, is to learn and evaluate information by using the CRAP test. That's CRAP, C-R-A-A-P. The CRAP test. It's currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And so when we're talking about the debate between separating the art and the artist, the author and their work of art, literature, we ask, what was their purpose? What was the purpose for which they wrote this? If they happen to have outspoken prejudices against minorities or LGBTQ folks, as an example, then maybe it's no wonder that there are no people of color or there are no LGBTQ plus characters in their Hugo Award-winning science fiction masterpiece. And more on, now, you know who I'm talking about, and if you don't, talk to me after. And speaking of knowing, more on that note, the more you read, the more things you will know. The more things that you learn, the more places that you'll go. Is a line by which author? I heard from the children's team over here, loud and clear. So yes, that was Dr. Seuss, and I bring him up for this really interesting issue that happened a number of years ago and is still ongoing. So most of you probably already know this, but the estate of Theodore Seuss Geisel, through Dr. Seuss Enterprises, which manages his legacy, decided in about 2001 that they were going to remove 6 titles from their body of publication. They were no longer going to print these 6 titles. And the reason they gave was because that these books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. Okay. So it's no surprise to anyone, I think this is generally known, that during his lifetime, Dr. Seuss absolutely exacerbated and dehumanized people, specifically in his political cartoons, and particularly Japanese people. Some of the illustrations in the 6 titles that were removed did the same. They provided offensive stereotypes to Asian and African people. And it raised an immediate and very difficult question for public libraries and school libraries, which is, what do you do? These books are on our shelves. We have them currently available for checkout. And as it turns out, there were many ways in which to answer this question. So what were some of them? Some public libraries, even on Cape Cod, never had the chance to answer this question. As soon as the news dropped that these books would never be published again, they went to go find them on the shelves, and guess what? They weren't even there. Somebody had decided for them. So the books were removed. The public library had them in the catalog, but were never going to be seen again, and somebody on Cape Cod is sitting on them, waiting for them to be worth a lot of money, probably. Other libraries decided that they would still circulate these items, but move them from the from the children's collection to the adult collection, making them accessible for those who wanted to have access to them, but did not put them on a shelf with other children's books to say, this is appropriate for children. And the valid reason for doing that is to keep access available, which, as a society, we cannot know in which direction we are going if we do not know where we have been. So to erase the ugliness of our history is still an act of erasing history. And our children have the right to know and to stand in judgment of what we have done in the past. Finally, some libraries, and we are one of those, did something that is not necessarily endemic to libraries, but we decided that we were going to sequester these items for a period of time before we donated them to an archive. We removed them from our collection, and while the books were still newsworthy and noteworthy, we provided access to anyone who wanted them. But we are not an archive. An archive's job is to sequester material until it's needed. Our job is to provide material that's needed by our community. As long as these books were in the zeitgeist and people wanted to talk about them, we would have them. When that day comes that no one cares anymore, we will not have them anymore. I cannot tell you what we will do with them because I do not know. But if there is an archive out there somewhere that needs them, we have them at the ready. Specifically, I am very grateful that our library has not faced any direct or formal material challenges during my 10-year tenure there, but we are not immune from the currents of change in this new climate that we're all facing. As we embrace the UU's fourth principle, which is a call for free and responsible search for truth and meaning, we have to acknowledge the challenges that librarians face. Conflicting community values pose a unique set of hurdles as different voices advocate for their own version of what that truth is and looks like. In the words of James Russell Lowell, and as echoed by Martin Luther King Jr., truth forever in the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet that scaffold sways the future. Our libraries help build the scaffolding of truth. And where we face conflicting values within our diverse community, and in an increasingly divisive landscape, we engineer and we reinforce the areas of the scaffolding even more. As part of our scaffolding, advocacy plays a pivotal role and is the main reason why I'm here today, in addition to my love for Peter Palchis. Librarians advocate for the principles of intellectual freedom, emphasizing that a library is a space for all voices, even those that may be unpopular or uncomfortable. In collaboration with the community, we stand stronger in our commitment to uphold the library's mission in the face of challenges. By encouraging community members like you to be advocates, we amplify the collective voice in the defense of freedom to explore diverse ideas. And after all, as Margaret Mead said, and is in the email signature line of Peter Palchis, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. I'd like to end with a bit of a call to action. Last summer, Representative Frank Moran and Senator Julian Cyr presented companion bills in the State House that seek to curb book challenges and to protect librarians and educators. It's House Bill 4229 and Senate Bill 2528, and they would ensure that books cannot be removed from schools or public libraries due to personal or political beliefs. The power to determine book selection in the library instead would lie in the hands of trained professionals. Illinois was the first state to put in the anti-book ban bill, and Massachusetts is on their heels. The first hearing on these bills was last Wednesday, January 10th. And during the hearing, Moran said, as an LGBTQ plus guy, I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. Books were an avenue to understanding. If you feel something different, there is an avenue and there's sometimes a path that educates you so that you know you're not doing things like wallowing in your own sorrow or worse. He said, we need to have open discussions about all topics, including race, including gender. Later in the hearing, after the committee chair had to separate Julian Cyr with those who were challenging the idea that this could be a possible thing that Massachusetts would finally put on the books, Cindy Rowe, who is the president and CEO of the Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action, testified to say the following, and I'm going to read what she said because I could not say it any better. She said, personally, I am horrified that today, in 2024, I have to be testifying in front of a state legislative committee in the United States of America in defense of the right to people to read books. Book bans are tactics designed to control what ideas people can be exposed to, warping our perception of the world around us. Further, book bans are an attempt to control our understanding of history in order to whitewash it. Efforts to combat book banning, like this legislation, are how we stand up to authoritarians, white nationalists, and others who would use division as a political tactic to keep us from coming together in a thriving democracy rooted in equity, empathy, and opportunity for all. Those bills, that testimony, that effort, and breathing life into legislation like that is what will protect libraries and the ideas that they contain, and is why I am here. By working with organizations like yours that share our commitment to intellectual freedom, we extend our reach, we extend our impact, we create community that collectively affirms and promotes the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And with that, I just want to say thank you for inviting me here today.
Thank you.
Some of the articles I referenced and some of the books I put in a reading list because Peter Melanie asked me to. And so if you are interested, please see me. I am not telling you what to read. But if you're interested in this reading list, I have one.